Okay,
And, okay, and I've switched hosts to you,
okay,
and it's Heather's computer.
Yes, it is,
Right.
well, there's Zoom.
It's the one that says Heather, make host. Okay,
okay,
you're host, which means you control the
okay.
slide.
Welcome, everyone. Appreciate everyone's presence this morning at the Canadian Churches of Christ Historical Society annual meeting for 2024. I think I've made all announcements that need to be made. I think you all have figured out there's coffee and goodies next door. Coffee is in the little carafe thing there so that more coffee can be made anytime it's needed. So help yourselves at any time. Again, an announcement that if you want to be voting on anything today, and that will only be about, can you all hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So the only voting that will take place will be for membership on the board. That'll happen at the end of the business meeting. If you want to be voting for that, we ask that you be a paid up member to vote. And if you are not a paid up member and would like to be, Margaret can help you with that at the registration table. Again, there are Ed Broadus books, books number 2 and 3 in the series, I believe, are both still available. Is that correct? Okay. They are $10 a piece. They're at the back and you can pay Dave for others. Also, Joseph Ash books are available at the back, also $10. Do we pay you for that too, Dave, or? No. Okay, so you would pay Margaret for that. Okay. Again, we're really happy you're all here. Thank you so much for your interest and your participation. And let's go to God in prayer as we begin. Father, thank you so much for being such a great God. Thank you for loving us. Thank you for making us your family. Father, we thank you for the heritage that we've received as children of yours. Whether we've received that heritage through family, if we've been blessed with being raised in Christian homes, or whether we've received that heritage through the faith of those who have brought us to a knowledge of you. Whatever the heritage, we are blessed to have received it, and we seek to preserve it. We seek to pass it on to the next generation. And Father, as we spend some time today talking about that heritage, we pray that in everything that your name would be honored and glorified. Father, we pray your blessings on all that we do. We thank you most of all for Jesus and for salvation through his blood. And it's through him we pray. Amen. Okay, so the first item on our agenda is to review the minutes of the last meeting. So I'm not going to read every single thing here. Hopefully you've perused a copy. But I'll highlight just briefly each of these things. The first item last year was introducing David Ford because Stan Helton had to step down off the board. The minutes of the previous meeting were distributed and we were doing like we are doing right now. Review of the previous year. We talked about newsletters, Living Legacies website, the same type of stuff we'll talk about this year. Okay, and then we looked at the financial report and we talked about nominations, the need for nominations and what happened there. 4 more nominations. We'll talk more about that when we get to that this year. And books available for sale, just like this year. Okay, so again, that's a very 20,000 foot flyby. But again, hopefully you have had a chance to peruse that. How many paid up members that are here today were here last year? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 or so. Okay. So if someone would like to make a motion to accept the minutes, or if there's any discussion on any discussion first, any concern? Okay, open for someone to accept. Paul?
Mary, I missed that.
Okay, Paul is making a motion to accept the minutes of the meeting. Seconder? Everybody's timid here. It's so cute. Dave Crothers. All in favor of accepting the minutes of last year's meeting? We have a pass. Okay, well, that was exciting. So, okay, so the next thing that we are, what happened there? While Paul was getting us back up, I neglected to mention the people that we have meeting with us online today. 2 of our 5 board members were unable to be with us for various reasons. Shelley Jacobs and David Ford are both with us virtually, as is Cynthia Bredner. We're very, very happy to have Cynthia join us in today's meeting as well. I think that was all, right? That's all who's virtual, okay, perfect,
Okay, Karen didn't want me.
okay. Yeah, she had some question about whether or not she'd be able to. Okay,
Is Ed brought us up?
Brought it, it's not on.
no,
He planned to go, yeah, I don't know.
okay,
There's nobody waiting to get in.
okay, so Margaret will keep an eye to that when she's not presenting a financial report. You can just do that from where you are there if you want, Margaret.
Well, I think I need to come there.
Okay, sure, whatever.
Are you doing that now?
Yeah,
You did. So does anybody need a copy of the financial report?
You need to advance these slides if there's a financial report slide.
are you seeing the first financial report slide at the moment?
No, we're just seeing the Word document or the slides in a whole thing. You just need to put the slideshow up. Right now, we're looking at the first page and on the left, all of the slides. I think that's what I'm seeing.
She's saying what we're saying.
Okay, yeah.
That is the slide.
Have you shared screen?
Yeah. Or we are currently sharing.
Okay, it's Heather Moore's screen that I'm seeing shared. David, are you seeing the slide they want us to see, or Shelley?
You don't have it in slideshow mode. So
Right.
yeah, you don't have it in slideshow mode. So the screen we're seeing is the introductory screen. We're not seeing the financial report. And so if you put it in slideshow mode and then forward it to the financial report screen.
When I do Zoom with the family, if I share a screen, I have to have it up before I share. I have to close the screen and share it again to get the new document.
Okay, well, all you have to do is scroll down on the left to the financial report and we'd be able to see it. So.
Okay, is that different?
Yes, great, thanks.
That works. Yay.
Okay, so, did anybody else need a copy of the financial report? You can see what's there now. The problem is to scroll through it too.
You want me to?
Yeah.
I can just advance whenever you tell me to.
Yeah, so. Obviously, since COVID, we haven't had much going on. And we haven't had a lot of extra activity. I'm just trying to. Okay, yeah, I was wondering if I had separated out, you can see on the screen there, you wanna scroll up a bit?
It's a slide. Really.
So last year there was memberships of $775, so that would have been. We'll divide that by 25. Paid up members for the 2023-2024 fiscal year was 33 people. But you'll also see there was some donations. There's several people who, along with their membership, gave a donation, and one person gave a very substantial one. Which we thank them profusely for that. They don't even, they're not even able to attend anymore. They're just not able to get here, but they wanted to be a part of it. So the total income for last year was $1480. Sales, I think that included, would have been 3 copies of the Joseph Ash book. So that went through our books. Ed Broadus's books are going to Dave. They're separate from the CCCHS. So that was what the total was last year. Bank charges, equipment, furniture and fixtures. Now that, on the back there, new category listed speakers. Okay, an item included in the equipment category is this thing here. What do you call it?
No, not the owl, the mics.
Okay, okay, the special mic.
Yeah.
So that, okay, this is separate.
That's GLBC.
This is.
Okay, that one's there. So, do you want to explain what you purchased? Or,
I'll talk about that later on.
oh, okay, so they purchased a mic speaker for doing the Living Legacies videos, okay? So if you saw the first couple of videos, they were a little bit rough. So, he's waiting to put out Ralph Perry's video, so you use the new one for Ralph. So when that video goes up, you'll see there's a difference. So that was the expense, that was the big expense. Various office supplies, trying to take file folders, hanging files for the archives themselves. And then the printing and copying is just when I make copies of the papers here. Murray was gonna talk about that a little bit, but be thinking about whether you actually want me to print everything, or do you just want Murray to put it up on the screen? I think some people like to have copies ahead of time, but we never know how many people's coming, so. Previous years, we printed 40 copies. This year, we printed 30. There's, I think, maybe 20 or 25 people here. Be thinking about what you want us to do, whether you want us to go ahead and print copies or not, because we're putting the expense here and maybe we don't really need to. We also have started making it a practice to cover speakers' costs, so that's what the costs were. So the total expenditures for the year was that $1227.20. And then you'll see here, just down below, if you're able.
I can't.
Okay, you can't get to it?
No, it's.
Okay, so yeah, that was the figure I was gonna go to. So the 92,1896 was the closing balance on June the 30th. If you go over on the back side, the bank balance as of August the 14th was 91,7470. So a couple more registrations came in between then. But that was the bank balance on the 14th of August, okay, so. Okay, and then basically what's written on the back is just stating some of the same things again, so you can understand them in an easier way, maybe. So the paid up members for the last fiscal year was 33. As of the date of June 30th, there was 1 paid up member. Now there was 3 as of August 14th, and a couple more came in after that. So as of today, there'll be a lot more. Not much more to it than that. Any questions? I'm sorry.
Just thank you.
Oh, now one thing I did put in the notes there, under the notes on the back page, I actually put it in there. Archive relocation funds still available as of June the 30th. There's still almost $4,000 of the archive relocation funds that are still there that we could designate for something specifically for the archives. We've been trying to look at getting some more file cabinets. I've been trying to find some online, cheaper. I really don't want to pay $400-500 per cabinet, but, that kind of thing. There's some shelving still needs to be done. So there's things that still needed for the archive. So that's being, identified separately, so we know it's there. So when we're ready to do that, we can. And really, Myrna's the one who keeps tabs on what's there, and we've identified things, we just have to find a way to do them, so that's one other thing that you might want to be aware of, so. Any other questions?
Margaret, the $4,000 you're talking about, is that included in the 9,200?
Yes, it's all there in the bank account, it's just I'm keeping track that belongs to it, to assign to that part of it, and so if there's anything needed, for instance, eventually, we probably need to have a proper copier, like a high-end copier, scanner. We might even need eventually to put a laptop in the archives so that we have it there specifically, because we're all working on our own and taking it there every time we go. That's what Myrna does every time she's there, so those kinds of things could be put into there. There's several things the board over the last 2 or 3 years has designated. Yes, we should do that, but we've not been able to get around to doing it because of COVID and everything else that's happening, so.
You're talking about one filing cabinet? Is there a requirement for other?
Well, there's a specific kind we want, and we had identified, I think, did we say we needed 4 new ones? There's some that are not in very good shape, there's some that
They
don't
don't-
block.
They don't have the
The hanging,
folders, they don't have the equipment, the hanging folders.
yeah. So, yeah, so we were in there 2 or 3 years ago during one of the COVID breaks. And we went through and identified what was needed, we just haven't been able to pursue, I've been looking online and admittedly not very regularly because I've been busy, but we've been looking for a specific kind of file, and we decided to get a legal size so that it'll fit both legal and letter. We want the 4-drawer, we want it locking, and we want the racks to put the hanging files on, just to make things so that so if you don't do that, the files flop over, they bend, just not very good shape. So that's what we've been looking for, we just haven't done it yet. And then other equipment might be needed, so that almost $4,000 is still, we're keeping in mind that's available for that purpose. So, okay, any other questions? Leave it to you to, okay, go from there then.
So again, we could have a motion to accept the financial report as presented. Or if there are any further questions, now would be an appropriate time for that as well.
So move.
All right, let's move into accept the minutes of the financial report. Seconder,
I'll second
Roy, thank you.
Okay, now, I didn't get those words, so.
Art, Ford, and Roy Williams. All in favor? And I would echo what Dave and Lorraine said in thanking Margaret for her usual excellent job. I really don't know how we would survive without Margaret. As is evidenced by the fact that when her 2 terms expired, she was appointed as financial officer when someone else had to take over as treasurer, because we can't do it without Margaret. Margaret's the one that keeps me online and make sure, or in line, I should say, make sure that I don't miss a meeting like that. So, yeah, she makes me look good. Whatever degree that's possible. Okay, so at this point, we will continue and look at the 2024 year in review. The highlight of 2024, in my opinion, was the Bethany tour. One of our board members, Shelley Jacobs, was at the time the archivist for the Disciples of Christ Historical Society in Bethany. And so I tapped her on the shoulder one day and I said, if we were to bring a bunch of people down there, would you show us around? She said, showing people around is the best part of my job. I love it. So we were able to get a group of, I think, roughly a dozen people, many of whom are here today, to go down there. And so I would just like to very briefly take you on a bit of the tour that we were taken on. Okay, well. That is the part of the main building of Bethany College. I was blown away with the beauty of that building. Evidently, Alexander Campbell had it designed on the basis of University of
Scotland.
Glasgow, Edinburgh, Shelley?
It was designed after the Old Main at the University of Glasgow in Scotland.
Glasgow, thank you.
Yeah.
I don't know why this is in the
There.
base.
And the University of Glasgow is where Walter Scott studied and where Thomas Campbell studied. And Alexander Campbell, after the shipwreck, also spent winter there at the University of Glasgow. So that had quite significance for the meeting, for the movement.
Wow, okay. This is Commencement Hall, beautiful, beautiful hall, in Bethany College. This is the Campbell Mansion. Not quite mansion by today's standards, but I'm sure for that time and place it was. This belonged to Campbell's in-laws, and it kind of came with his wife, something like that.
Yes, the house was built in 4 pieces. The house that Alexander Campbell would have had would be the one that's on the far right. There was 4 sections and then added on to from there. But it was about a quarter of the size of that when Alexander Campbell first got it.
Okay. This is the Alexander Campbell study. There is no seating in there. Alexander Campbell spent his time there vertically. I believe I remember hearing he would come out there at like 4 o'clock in the morning and he would study history and science and math and of course Bible before he started his day. And of course that was Ed Broadus standing in front of the Campbell study. This is a sign talking about the Bethany Church, built in 1852, according to plans drawn by Alexander Campbell. Built on the same foundation as a previous one in 1832. So we're coming up on 200 years of a church on that site. That church is no longer in regular use. But again, thanks to Shelley, that was made available to us and we met there on the Saturday and then we had actually church together there on the Sunday morning. And that's what the building looks like on the inside. I highly doubt that the pews looked like that 170 years ago. But, and there's Ben Weeb standing behind the podium where Alexander Campbell frequently preached from. Ben wouldn't preach from there. We only had like a handful of people, so he wanted to be on the level with us. I wanted him to preach like, like Alexander Campbell did, but Ben just wanted to be with the people. This is the approximate site of where Alexander Campbell was baptized, in that creek somewhere within a mile or so. The site of the Brush Run Church, this was kind of the very original church that those who spawned the movement first created. I'm not doing a good job on this, but Shelley, do you want to explain what Brush Run was?
Well, when Thomas Campbell moved to United States, he moved to the area of Washington, Pennsylvania, and he was a Presbyterian minister, but he ran afoul of the Presbyterian Church, and there were a group of others in Washington itself who also were not satisfied with what was going on. They met together. They were called the Christian Association of Washington. They asked Thomas to write a document stating what they believed. He wrote the document called the Declaration and Address. which we now consider the founding document of the restoration movement. But it was signed by Thomas Campbell and Thomas Atchison. In the first church they started, that was published by the Washington Observer in 1809. And then in 1811, this church at Brush Run was started. And so that's kind of the early days of the movement. 1832 is sort of the marker year when the Stone and Campbell movements united. But Alexander Campbell's views continued to evolve as he studied and grew. And there came a time when he separated from the Brush Run Church, and there's a whole history involved in that as well that's too lengthy to go into at this point. But this is kind of the first church that we consider in the Restoration movement, and this was started by Alexander and Thomas Campbell and the Christian Association of Washington.
Okay, thank you. So that building is no longer there, but that was the site of it, and that is what I turned around from taking that last picture, and that's just the view from the area of the Brush Run Church. Yeah, West Virginia is just beautiful. And that's the group with a few add-ons. There was some people from the Washington, Pennsylvania, I believe, congregation who were also there at that time. So yeah, that's kind of all of us. And that is our gracious hostess, Shelley, and thank you again, Shelley, both for that tour and for your input just now. Okay. So yeah, that was.
Before you go on, if anybody wants to see my whole set of pictures from that trip, they're on my laptop. If you want to see them during break time, I've got them.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so if you want to see lots of pictures, see Margaret at lunch or during breaks or whatever.
We also just happened to go at peak fall leaf season. And talk about the best place in the world probably to see the fall leaves is the small winding roads of West Virginia. I mean.
Okay, so the next thing on my year in review is the newsletter. So the newsletter had a few articles in it. Certainly we were highlighting the Bethany trip. David Ford had an article in there, one of our board members. David is currently working on his dissertation for his PhD and was willing to share some insights that he had gained during his research. There was an article about living legacies. I will talk about living legacies in a moment. And we've started a section called Get to Know Your Board. So we had highlights on both Margaret and Paul. And so you can look for others in future issues. Living legacies. I told you I'd talk about that in a minute. So Living Legacies, for anyone who doesn't know, is an initiative started by the CCCHS a couple of years ago. The concept is that we will interview various people, a video as well as audio interview for the purpose of keeping it for future generations, okay? Unfortunately, that kind of technology didn't exist, 100, 200 years ago, so we can't have S.M. Jones telling us in his own words about his, work, or Joseph Ashe, or whoever you want to talk about. But we want to begin an effort to capture these people who tell their own stories in their own words. So Jeff Ellis graciously agreed to be our guinea pig. And so our first Living Legacies interview was with Jeff. And we are putting these up on YouTube. So if you search for them on YouTube, you can find them. If you want to ask for a link directly to these, feel free to ask us, and us being anyone on the board, and we will make sure that we get the exact link to you so you can see it. So the interview with Jeff was just kind of barely ready to show a snippet last year at the annual meeting, and then we got it up on YouTube after that. Last year, we interviewed Ed Broadus. That was recorded in May of last year. No, May of this year, I believe. It was recorded in May of some year. This year, okay. And we just concluded, the Ed Broadus recording is also up on YouTube already. The Ralph Perry interview was just conducted last month. I've got it ready to put up on YouTube, except for the fact that I'm waiting for some pictures, because I think these recordings are always better if you can include a few pictures of the person from their past. So I've at least been promised a picture of Ralph and Joyce's wedding, and I'm hoping we'll get other pictures as well. I keep meaning to talk to Myrna to see if I can get that family picture. Yeah, so, and I'm sure I get them a lot. Yeah, I won't say any further. Yeah, so, so that's Living Legacies. And Margaret already alluded to the purchase that we made, buying high-end microphones so that we can, so that we can get better audio. The interview with Ed in particular, I really had to bump up the volume as far as I could get it to go when I created the audio, and it's not too bad. But it would have been way better if we'd had these mics at that time. Okay, so that is the last year, upcoming year. We've got more AV tech that we're going to be purchasing. We want to be able to have some better lighting as well. For our Living Legacy interviews, as well as a tripod for whatever camera is being used to record. And of course, the newsletter again needs to be, we try for two newsletters a year. We only put out one this past year, so hopefully we will do better next year. Keep going. So Living Legacies, beyond getting Ralph Perry's interview up, I have had a chat with Diana Turner on Facebook, and she is quite eager to be a candidate for Living Legacies to talk about Roy and Nell Merritt, her parents. So I think that would be really wonderful to do. Early in Living Legacies, Gordon and Dorothy Dennis had agreed to be interviewed as well. I have not done anything about that, so I'm hoping I can make that happen this year. I talked to Steve May yesterday. I happened to be sitting beside him at a dinner at Tintern, and so asked him, because he'd been on my mind, but I have never reached out to him. So Steve has said that he would be happy to serve in that way as well. Too fast.
Too best.
Yeah, thanks. So we're open to other suggestions of people that you think would be good ideas of people to interview. We're also open to offers to help. If you would like to be the person to conduct the interview, what happens is we have a standard list of questions. So you don't have to come up with everything all on your own. We've got a lot of helps, but for example, the Ralph Perry interview was conducted by his grandson, Cody Glover, who is the preacher at Fendon. And it's the first interview that I didn't do myself, and I was thrilled to death to have a family member of Ralph's actually conducting the interview. So if you would like to, what I do when someone's interview is forthcoming, I send that person the interview questions in advance, and I encourage them to make that list of questions their own. If there's questions that don't really seem to apply or that they don't want included, they can strike them out. If there's other questions that make sense to include but wouldn't necessarily make sense for a generic list. To make those questions their own, that way they can talk about their lives in a way that makes sense to them. So all that to say, if you would like to be an interviewer, you've got a lot of support available to you. If you'd like to be a photographer, I make no claims to be a very professional photographer, so I would be happy if someone else wanted to do that. My daughter Ashley did the photographing for the first two interviews. And any other way that you think you might be interested in being involved in this project, input would be welcome. 2025 annual meeting plans. This is the first year that we actually have next year's speaker already agreed upon. Usually it's well into the new fiscal year that we're saying, we got an upcoming annual meeting, who's gonna speak? And I've always thought how great it would be if we already knew, but by the time of this annual meeting, who our next speaker was going to be. And so I would like to take a couple of minutes right now to introduce Don Stevenson. Don, if you put your hand up so people know who you are. I spent a pleasant evening in the home of Don and his wife earlier this year. Don gave me a bit of a bio so that I could introduce him to you. Don was raised in a family steeped in the Restoration history, in a house built by his great-great-grandfather, who arrived on PEI as a 10-year-old boy with his family from Scotland in 1820. Don grew up in a home whose grandparents and parents helped establish and were prominent leaders in the Fredericton Church of Christ disciples on PEI. Fredericton PEI?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting, okay. I read through that so quickly when I was skimming it that I just assumed New Brunswick. Okay, it should be no surprise that both Donald and his younger brother Paul graduated from Maritime Christian College in Charlottetown and served in churches in the Maritimes. Two of Paul's sons are currently ministering to churches in Nova Scotia. Before moving to Tennessee to pursue a Master's of Divinity degree at Emmanuel School of Religion in 1970, Don ministered in pioneer churches of Christ disciples in Prince Edward Island, Nova Scotia, and New Brunswick, and witnessed and participated in the separation of those congregations from the Christian church disciples in Canada for mostly theological differences. Since returning to Canada in 1974, Don has been active in 3 early restoration churches in Ontario, Aylmer, Keele Street, and Grand Valley Churches of Christ, and served as a Bible school teacher, elder, board chair, and supply preacher at Westway Christian Church for over 30 years. He also served as history professor and president of Ontario Christian Seminary from 1978 to 91, and at Ontario Christian Assembly as camp dean and on their board for a number of years. Ontario Christian Assembly being their church camp, the Christian Church's church camp near Orangeville, Grand Valley, Shelburne. Okay. Majoring in church history, not unexpectedly, he chose as his thesis the life of James Alexander Lord from Lord's Cove, New Brunswick, where Don had ministered. Lord was an editor of the Christian Standard during a tumultuous period in our restoration history. While serving the Aylmer Church, Don wrote a history for its 90th anniversary. While serving at Westway, he wrote a history for its 50th anniversary and is completely working on the history of the Grand Valley Church for its 162nd anniversary this October. So as you might get the impression, Don has a love of history, and especially a love of history of churches in the Restoration movement. Don has also contributed several articles in the book, The Campbell Stone Movement in Ontario, edited by Claude Cox in 1995. Don married Sharon Potroff in 1968 and has discovered that her maternal ancestors were active in leadership at Ontario congregations in Erin Centre, Grand Valley, Hillsburg, and Toronto's Keele Street. Don and Sharon have 2 daughters. Their eldest daughter and her husband are active in a Christian church in Tennessee, where he is an elder. She is a Bible school teacher and pianist. And their 4 adult children are carrying on their restoration heritage for the 8th generation, serving Christ in Christian service camps and worship. So Don will be speaking at 2 of our 3 sessions next year, one on the many generations of the Stevenson family and their impact on the Canadian restoration movement for over 200 years, and one tracing the history of the disciples after the split with the a cappella churches, with its own split a few decades later over liberalism in their theology. Don's history mentioned above for Grand Valley is called Your Roots Are Showing, dealing with not only family histories, but spiritual histories of those who have gone before. Maybe a catchy theme name for next year's annual general meeting? Yet to be decided. So anyway, Don, welcome. Thank you for being here, and thank you for agreeing to speak next year. I'm eager to hear what you have to say. Okay, that brings us down to elections. So I put together a slide just showing, so anyone who is on the board may serve up to 2 terms of 3 years each. And after those 2 terms, if they are still wanting to be a member, to be active in the society, they can, but they're asked to step down off of the board for a year. But if for any reason the board deems fit to do so, that person can be appointed to serve in that interim year. Following which they can stand for re-election. So the top line is my sordid history, and I'm up for another 2 years before I need to step down. Shelley Jacobs is the vice chair, and she's in her 1st term. And that term will be up next year, and if she wishes to re-up for a 2nd term, she'll be able to do that. As I mentioned earlier, Margaret had her 2 terms, and then she stepped down, but whoever, it was Randy Morit who came on the board at that time and reluctantly agreed to be treasurer, but didn't really feel qualified to do all the bookwork. So Margaret was appointed as financial officer. So while not technically on the board, she, again, made Randy look good, and kept the books going. So after that year of hiatus, or actually, I guess she did that all through Randy's term.
Murray?
Yeah.
That was because of COVID,
Oh, okay.
because we didn't have a meeting in 20.
Yeah, okay. So anyway, Margaret, is just finishing up, the 1st term on her 2nd run. And she has, agreed to allow her name to stand for, do we re-elect if the person is?
Yeah, we offer someone else a chance.
Yeah,
Actually, you didn't ask me if I agreed.
oh, okay.
But since nobody else wants the job.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I still haven't asked, but she's agreed now. And Paul was appointed at the end of last year's meeting because he wasn't elected. It was after all of that finished that the appointment was made. So Paul, are you wanting to allow your name to stand? Okay, so we have two vacancies, and we have 2 more or less incumbents. However, if there are others who you would like to nominate, we can have a real election. So if anyone would like to nominate someone for a candidate, speak now or hold your peace for 3 years. No, 1 year. You can do it again next year. Going once. Going twice. And do we have to vote if it's acclamation?
At the Bible college we do, right? I think we do. We vote, we do once a year.
I don't know how these things work.
Normal, I think we usually have to vote in some
Confirm
way.
that,
Yeah.
the ones, yeah.
We'll vote them in anyway for confirmation?
So
Okay,
I think normally you do a first, a second, and then accept
okay.
for each position.
So we actually need a motion,
Yeah.
even though the person, okay, would someone like to move that Margaret be,
It needs to be on, the motions are how things get official in the record,
okay,
and you have to be official in the record. Unless people are more knowledgeable than I.
some chairman, eh? So,
I think a couple of years ago, when we did this with you, we just said that you were claimed, but as long as it's in the minutes what we did, I don't think it matters, but.
well, let's do things as official. So would someone like to make a motion that, Margaret's name stand for
I make a
reelection?
motion that both the names stand,
Oh,
Paul and Margaret said that we.
okay, well, I suppose there's no reason why that can't all go in one motion. So Lorraine Carruthers, seconder for Margaret's and Paul's names standing for reelection.
I will second.
Dave, oh, okay.
All of the family.
Well, family.
So just so that. This is my board chair mind.
Okay.
Just working here. The motion is technically to let them stand, not to be elected. So do you want to amend the motion that these board members be elected?
I think what we do is move to close nominations
Yeah.
and then, so I'll move the nominations to close.
Okay. So do we have, so that, is that two motions for which we need two seconders or?
First, close the nomination.
Nominations to be closed by Art.
Okay,
Second, close the nominations.
seconder for closing nominations. Ben, thank you.
And then
We all look.
carry that.
Okay, so all agreed for closing nominations. Thank you. Okay.
Therefore, they are claimed.
Oh, we're done now?
Yeah.
Oh, I like that. That's good. Okay, this is a part of the German thing that I obviously am not very comfortable with, familiar with, good at. Okay,
Okay, so. I've rewritten that.
oh, there was one more thing I wanted to talk about in either the year in review or the upcoming year. I guess it more stands for year in review. Let me get my notes back. One of the I was gonna talk about this at the end of the financial report, actually, is what it was. One of the items on there was the re-upping of the domain name. And I wanted to talk about that because I've been on the board for, what is it, 8 years now, something like that? And it had never come up before, and it never dawned on me that someone has to keep domains up to date until I received an email from Ron Knight one day in Meaford. And Ron said, I've been keeping the CCCHS domain up to date, and I think it's about time that I turn it over to the society. And I'm like, oh, you have to do that. And so I wanted to take a moment here to just to make known that Ron Knight has been doing that for us for I don't know how long, but a very long time.
What is that actually?
Um,
What does that mean, domain?
Domain means when you go into www.cccHS.ca, cccHS.ca is something we have to pay for to keep it up to date. And if we don't keep that up to date, somebody can come along and say, I want that website. And they can pay and they get it. So we have to keep that current. And it never crossed my mind. So, Ron Knight has been doing that for us all of these years. So I went to Jeff, just like 2 or 3 days ago, and I said, I hate to do this to you, on the spur of the moment, but can you just throw together a little bit about the involvement of various Meaford people, because I know that Meaford people were heavily involved in CCCHS in the early years. And so I'd just like to read you what Jeff sent back to me. And Jeff, thank you for doing this on a moment's notice like this. It wasn't really fair for me to ask him, but he did it anyway. 3 people, Jeff says, are of note during CCCHS stay in Meaford, not to mention the number of unsung servants in the Meaford community. Ron Knight arranged for a room to be built in the former fire hall in downtown Meaford that the Knight family had acquired for its collections and records. At the society's first meeting in this setting, the Knight family received an offer to purchase that it could not turn down. Ron then arranged for rented space in town that would accommodate both his family's and the CCCHS's records. This was the society's home for the next 5 years. Throughout this period, Roy and Edith Williams served as custodians of the collection, spending many hours in improving and enlarging the collection. With the termination of this facility, the collection moved to Beamsville, so the archives are now located right here on campus at Great Lakes. So I would really like to take this opportunity to formally recognize the efforts by Roy and his late wife Edith, and Ron Knight, for all of the huge amounts of work that they did in making things possible in the early days of CCCHS. So Roy, and your dear late wife and Edith and Ron, on behalf of CCCHS, we sincerely thank you for everything you've done for us. I'm sure I speak for everyone also in extending to Roy our condolences on the passing of Edith earlier this year. Edith was a beautiful lady, and she's going to be missed terribly. It was just great that Roy and Edith got 60 years together.
Murray,
Yes,
did you see there was a charge that needed to be paid?
there is, yes.
Murray?
And who was paying that?
Oh, one moment, whoever online, I'll get you in a second.
Okay.
Dave Crothers is just asking, who has been footing the charge for the domain. Ron Knight was doing it all these years. I offered to Ron to reimburse him for some or all of that. He said, no, I was happy to do it. But now the CCCHS is paying for that themselves.
That has gone on to the new fiscal year expense sheet.
Okay,
Murray paid for it for 3 years,
yeah,
and
I
then
paid
he's
for
been
the.
reimbursed for that.
I paid for the next 3 years, but that was after our fiscal year ends, so that's part of what's going to be seen next year in our financial report. But yeah, the society has reimbursed me for that. Okay, so who was asking something online?
Me. So just kind of for clarification for some people, the domain name is for the website presence. So if we want to keep our website presence in that particular web address, that's what we're paying for. But I also have a question, sort of who's been updating the website, and do we have plans for all of that? Because this domain stuff is new information for us too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we've had a website for many years, www.cccchs.ca. Who maintains the website? The physically maintaining of it when anything needs to be changed is done by Dave McWalter of the Waterloo congregation. Dave is one of these incredibly quiet people, but He is talented in IT and has always been very happy to keep that updated for us. So basically, Dave just takes instruction from the board, which usually means from me. If there's anything that needs to be updated, each year, if we do have new people on the board, then I ask Dave to update the list of the board members on the membership page. I try to keep the events page up to date as well. So if you were to go to the events page right now, you would see advertising for today's meeting. There's a lot more that should be kept up to date, but at least we try to keep those fairly current.
I think you've been putting the newsletters on there as well.
Yes, yes, there is there's a tab, I'm not sure if it's called newsletters or archive, but whatever it is, newsletters, okay. And if you go into that tab, we do keep all the newsletters online there, but we also have an archive search capability that was written for us a few years ago, so that you can see if a particular thing that you're looking for is available at the archive. It does not give you access to click on it and open it up and read the book or whatever. It just gives you information about the item that you're looking for, whether it exists and who donated it and when and who was the author and various bits of information. And Myrna does a great job keeping all of that up to date for us. Any other questions, comments, anything?
We did that already.
Yes. Okay,
Hurry,
yes,
I just wanted to add to, so. Point about youth and I being custodians during that period of time. Jeff Ellis continued to come up on occasion to process and bring additional information as it became available.
yes, thank you for pointing that out. Yeah, this society, I believe, wouldn't exist if Jeff and a few others hadn't made that happen. And Jeff has always been a driving force behind this. So we do appreciate everyone who has given us even just this heritage of the historical society. Okay, we are to break at 10:30. Wow, look at how well I timed that. That's because I spent hours timing all of this. So we have a 15-minute break now and we will resume. We will resume at 10:45.
Oh,